All right, so today I'm going to be going over how to make zone 2 cardio less boring. So there's going to be five tips for you guys. What zone 2 cardio is that easy type of low intensity cardio, so the long, slow distance type stuff. You may be sitting on a bike, you may be sitting on a rower, you may be going for a run, lots of different things like that at low intensity. So, zone 2, which is generally around about 150 beats per minute, so it's really low, but it's called steady state, so it's still not super low. It's in that steady state zone where it's pretty much the top of your aerobic threshold. So if you don't know what the aerobic threshold is, I've linked the description. I've chucked a link in the description of this for you to check out afterwards on a video that I talk all about aerobic and anaerobic thresholds and how to train the both. So the zone 2 is pretty much at the top or around about that top area of your aerobic threshold. So we're working the aerobic system. So it can, because it is that low intensity in nature, you're not there just grinding away, trying to go as hard as possible. It can get boring because you have to do it for long periods of time to actually get that adaptation out of it. So what I'm going to go over in this video is just 5 tips on how to make it a little bit less boring. Okay. So now that we've got that out of the way, you understand what zone 2 cardio is, and typically it lasts, 40 to 90 minutes or even longer for some elite sort of training, but typically around about the 60-minute mark of just low intensity, steady state, so just continuous low intensity work. So here's the 5 tips. So number 1 is to just be aware of the benefits of low intensity cardio. So that is a huge thing, like understanding what the benefits behind that training is will actually give you some more purpose towards that training rather than just sitting on the bike for 40 minutes, just chugging along, just going, oh, what is the point of this? Why don't I go harder for a little bit less? Why don't I do some intervals? All that sort of stuff. So understanding the actual benefits and the adaptations that are happening at that lower intensity is a huge one. Again, there's a lot more on the aerobic and zone 2 training in the link. If you follow that link in the description, so you can dive right into that and really understand that. But just to give you a brief overview of some benefits in working in that low intensity zone 2 cardio. So it improves your aerobic threshold and your ability to work for longer periods. So just sustain effort for a long period, even though it's not a high effort, it's still work for a very long period. And especially as a tactical athlete, police, fire, ADF, anything like that, that is the majority of your stuff. You're going to be working all day long, very long periods through the night, all that type of stuff. As well as that, it really helps with recovery side of things. So even if you're working, like doing high weight sort of lifting in the gym, 5 to 7 reps sort of thing, or even less, that recovery in between your sets, that's done by your aerobic system. If you're not recovering properly in between your sets, you're not going to be able to put in as much effort for your actual work periods. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. So that recovery helps with even high intensity weightlifting training as well. Okay. It gets you really good at fat metabolism because that is your primary source of fuel around in that sort of intensity. So you get really good at breaking down and using fat as a fuel source rather than carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are a quicker fuel source, but fat gives you a lot more fuel, but it's a little bit slower to break down. If you can speed up that process and get more efficient at that metabolism of fats, then you're going to last longer and have a lot more fuel there. Okay, aerobic system efficiency. So it's working at that top end of your aerobic threshold. So it's still predominantly aerobic driven. So that means your energy is being created using oxygen. So it just improves the efficiency of that system and just gets you better, not just at the fat metabolism, but just creating that energy using oxygen in the process. Okay, heart elasticity. So that's a huge one that only happens in low intensity training. So what that is your actual heart increases the amount that it can expand. So elasticity, so it's eccentric loading. What this means is it fills up more with blood. It gets bigger as it draws blood in. Now, as the intensity goes up, your heart doesn't get the chance to expand as much as it can at that low intensity. And instead of training the size by like increasing the elasticity, as those higher intensities goes up, you now increase the amount that it can actually pump via it getting stronger and pumping harder, because it doesn't get that chance to expand as much as it can just because that intensity is going up. So sticking at lower intensity allows your heart to expand as much as possible, and it gets that adaptation of being increasing its elasticity, which means it's going to be able to draw more blood in and pump more blood out with one single stroke. So that is a huge one when it comes to low intensity stuff. Breathing under low fatigue as well. So it gives you a super, like a really, really good chance to work on just breathing mechanics and getting good at controlling your breathing, because it's under low fatigue. So you're able to sustain like really good breathing mechanics and work on it. And that goes along with movement control as well. So all of your exercise, like your movements towards whatever you're doing, you can really concentrate on it because it's under low fatigue. So you're working on really good technique as well, especially when it comes to things like running. You can just work on that. There's so much that goes into any sort of movement, even cycling, rowing, all that sort of stuff. If you're working at that low intensity, you can really work on the actual technique side of things while you have low fatigue until you get towards the end and you start to fatigue. Okay, another really big thing, adaptation that happens as well, mental resilience. To be able to just keep pushing, to keep going, even though it's boring as shit. You create that muscle in your brain to be able to just switch off. This is what I'm doing. Let's just get it done. So mental resilience, just to be able to get shit done, is something that you're training as well. Okay, so that's number one. Just be aware of the actual benefits of that low intensity cardio. It's number two, to be tracking your progression. Okay, so by doing this, you're going to see your progression over time. If you're not tracking things, and things to track is heart rate, distance, speed, all that type of like resistance, anything that you can track it. And then when you repeat that same thing over and over and over again, you'll start to see, all right, I can work at that higher level with a lower heart rate. I'm going further with that lower heart rate, or I'm going that same distance with a lower heart rate. As you can see, like you can see that progression, but it takes months to be able to see that. And you need to track your stuff so that you can actually see that progression. It's really motivating seeing, all right, now I'm going, 5Ks at this speed and my heart rate's only sitting at this, or now I'm running it at this speed and my heart rate's still within that aerobic zone. It's really motivating to see, actual adaptations happening in the body. And that only comes when you're tracking your stuff and recording all of your results so that you can see that progression. Okay, so that's number two. Make sure you track your progression so that you can see it over time. Number three is to do something that you actually enjoy. So if you've just been given, if you've been prescribed like cardio of choice, zone 2 cardio of choice, steady state cardio of choice, whatever the wording is, if you've got a choice with that exercise, do something that you actually enjoy. Go out and run a new track. Go and ride a bike. Go and do a bit of swimming. Do whatever you enjoy. Go do some hiking. Like, absolutely love that for zone 2. Chuck a pack on, go for some hiking. If you've got choice over it, then why the hell make it boring? Go out and do something that you actually want to do. Okay, so choose an exercise you like. Choose a location that you like. So with zone 2 cardio, the big thing that we're aiming for is just time in that zone. There's not so much, we're not trying to, unless you're trying to see your progression on a specific track. But outside of that, you just are there trying to stay in that zone for that period. So you can go out and try new tracks with your running, try new tracks with your cycling, whatever it is, like just try a new location and do, or even just, if you train at home, go into the gym and do some work in the gym for a little bit. You got people to look at, things to see. or do it at home. Challenge yourself, your mindset a little bit more to actually sit down and cycle for an hour just by yourself. Go into those dark places of boredom. But yeah, do something you enjoy. So another thing is change it up. So week by week, if it is cardio of choice, do a run this week, do a cycle next week, do a bike the next week, do a row the next week. Whatever it is, change it up to make it less boring for yourself. Like a little bit of variation between the exercises will go a long way with you actually staying interested rather than doing the same thing over and over. Because like I said before, if it's cardio of choice, if we're not working on a specific thing with that zone 2 cardio, it's just a matter of staying in that zone for that period of time. And that's training your aerobic system and all the benefits that I spoke about before. Okay, so that's number 3. Do something you enjoy. Number 4 is to set specific targets. So this is something that I do all the time. All right, set a specific heart rate. Say we're on the bike, right? We are setting. I like to be like, okay, I'm going to be sitting at that specific heart rate, 150 beats per minute on the dot, and see how long I can hold it for. See how long I'm able to sustain this pace for while holding that. See what my pace has to drop down to while holding that. And I'll record all of that as well. Again, tracking my progression and seeing if I can hold it for longer, like a pace for longer and longer, the more and more I do it. So setting yourself specific targets, and especially when it comes to, because we're working in zones, heart rate targets are a really good one to set for and like try to aim and stick with. All right. And watch over time your ability to hold a higher pace for a longer for a lower heart rate, like I was talking about before. You'll be able to sustain that pace longer and longer and cover more distance over that 40-minute period compared to when you very first did it, because you could only hold a pace of 20 k's an hour for 5 minutes, and then the rest had to sort of drop down and down and down because your heart rate was just skyrocketing and you had to reduce the output that you were doing. Whereas, the more and more you do it, the longer and longer you can hold that 20 kilometers an hour, and you'll get further and further during that 40 minutes. Okay, so yeah, set specific targets, and especially when it comes to heart rate for zone 2 training. Now, another thing you can do as well, so number 5, right? Tip number 5 is to do low intensity intervals. So this is sort of in line with the specific targets, but with this one, we're dynamic. We're moving between areas. So what you want to do is create some intervals for yourself using still that heart rate zone that you want to be in. So that zone 2, you don't want to be going up or below, but set a target for yourself for 5 minutes. I'm going to be at the top range of that zone. So let's say we're going to be aiming for 150 beats per minute, and we're going to hold that for 5 to 10 minutes. Right, from there, we're going to go drop our heart rate back down to 140 beats per minute, and we're going to hold that for 5 to 10 minutes. What this teaches you is something that's called dynamic energy control. So you can control your output and create a certain intensity out of it. Not only that, it's also teaching you how to recover while you're actually still working. So by going for 150 beats per minute down to 140 beats per minute, you understand what your body needs to do to actually lower that heart rate. And you go through some recovery methods as you're actually still working, like breathing, concentrating on relaxing, and getting that heart rate down as low as possible for that second interval, 5 to 10 minutes at 140 beats per minute. This is really, really handy and beneficial to learn when you do actually go out and do some higher intensity stuff. So let's say we're going for a big, like a long run. Okay, we want to try to keep that heart rate as low as possible, so we last longer during that. Like we can sustain a higher effort for longer. So let's go out for a long distance, like a long run, and then all of a sudden we hit a hill. We're powering up the hill, our heart rate skyrockets, and then we get to the top. We don't want to walk down the other side. We want to keep that pace up, but we want to recover so that we don't completely flatline and end up, dead 5 minutes down the road. So now we understand what it takes to actually reduce that heart rate because we've been practicing it during our zone 2 training. we know the feeling, we know what we have to do to reduce that heart rate. So now we can still run, but go through all of those methods that we've been practicing and feel our heart rate drop back down so that we can recover, but we're still actually moving. We're still doing the run. We're not walking or anything. We're still able to do the run and recovering as we run. Really, really handy thing to do. And that's across the board. So even in the like in the field environment, in like battle PT, all sorts of stuff that you'll see in a tactical environment, you'll go out and you'll do something super intense. You need to, bust through a door. You need to clear a room. All right, now we need to move from this building, 15 Ks down the road. But we can't stop now. We need to keep going. If you're still jacked, you don't know how to recover yourself as you're moving, then you're going to be in the hurt locker the whole way. Whereas if you understand how to reduce that load and reduce the stress on the body and dynamically control your energy, so recover as you're actually moving, like, sweet boys, let's go to the next location, and we're walking, and as we're going through that, like as we're moving locations, you're concentrating on recovering, but you're still actually moving. Okay, it is really it goes into the actual field environment really, really well. It's a super handy thing to learn. It's a skill to train as well. Like those things you train, you learn that sort of stuff. All right, so they're the 5 tips. Okay, so to help with your boredom, with your zone 2 training, number 1 is to be aware of the benefits of low intensity cardio. Number 2 is to track your progression so you can see how that you are getting fitter over time and it motivates you. Number 3 is to do something you actually enjoy. Get out, run new tracks, do the actual exercise that you enjoy, all that type of stuff. Number 4 is to set specific goals. So set a specific heart rate that you want to work for and see how long you can last, doing certain intensities throughout. And then number 5 is to hit those low intensity intervals, which is really a really good way to learn dynamic energy control. So you can control the intensity, the effort that your body's putting in while you're actually still working and able to recover as you're still going. All right, guys, hopefully that helps you out. Get into it. Zone 2 training is very beneficial and everyone needs to do it at least a couple of times through the week.